Alright, so this is obviously I said that the location would change just for this week because I came down here and we saw Logan in Pittsburgh. Huh?
Over.
Over.
You come over to here.
Oh, for God's sake. Um, so, obviously we'll just go right into it. Obviously this is the kind of... Jackman has been wanting to end Wolverine for quite some time now. Like, he's been trying to find every way to get out of it, to the point that Bryan Singer seemed awfully bitter about it when they were doing one of the cons. But he seems to, this is kind of, him and Mangold got together and said, let's, you know, kind of bring this to a close now. And yeah, it does work as a closure movie. But obviously, to get to that point, we are going ahead to, 2029?
Mm-hmm.
Where we're in the future, and apparently tigers are extinct. That's dropped on us.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolverine and...
Not just tigers, but we've later find out that mutants all but are too.
Yeah.
Because there's a little comment on the radio and he says, it's 2029, why are we still talking about mutants?
Yeah. And he's, and that doctor was, like, really freaked out about finding Logan the way he was.
Yeah.
Because then we're, so yeah, what was I talking about? We're in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And Logan and Xavier are aging, finally. So, yeah, at some point, I guess, between the 80s and the 2000s, McAvoy's eventually going to become Patrick Stewart at some point.
Quite the aging.
There is no... I don't know. We're going to avoid spoilers the best we can. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say this, because I would think people probably know by now, and if they don't, it's not like... You know, they get their hopes up for nothing, so we can say this. I don't recall a single mention of Magneto. Like,
No.
not even a slight reference.
No, and there's no explanation either of why, after all these years, Xavier finally has some hair.
Yeah.
There's no explanation for that either.
Especially after they just gave us the reason he lost it last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing, is that was kind of my concern, was... And this kind of goes into the tone of the movie, too, is... One of my, I mean, not just me, I imagine just in general, one of the big complaints about the X-Men series has always been how really damn incoherent it is. Like off the charts incoherent. Even when they specifically tried to set up Days of Future Past to fix all that stuff. And even then it was still kind of like, you still left some stuff open here. There's still some stuff I'm unsure about.
To be fair, though, there's a lot that they would have had to clean up. Because it's... For a linear series with the same people in it and telling the same story, it does get very, very jumbled.
You know where this all started? The Last Stand. The Last Stand fucked everything up.
I know, because there was a pretty seamless transition between 1 and 2. And then The Last Stand came in and everybody hated it, which, you and I have talked before, we don't think The Last Stand's that bad.
Yeah.
We don't think it's bad enough to warrant a reboot of a series.
And then
there's far worse movies for that. Batman and Robin.
Yeah. And then of course they tried X-Men Origins, and we saw
and
how...
that failed.
So then he and Mangold did The Wolverine a few years ago, which was, I remember them trying to get that to be the first R-rated one, because everybody was like, Wolverine needs to be R-rated. I mean, look at his power, and there's like no blood in his movies. I know. The thing I liked here that they added was it's not just bloody when he kills people, but it's bloody when he gets hit with stuff, too, or when he gets cut. Because in the other movies, it's just it just goes away, but then there's, like, blood before it goes away.
It shows damage.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're playing Mortal Kombat, and you play it on regular mode, and then you turn on blood mode. It's like for this one they turned on blood mode.
And this movie, I mean, people were building it up, and of course you look at Wolverine and you think, yeah, I could see, if he stabs people, there'll be some blood on his claws. They'll add that, and then that'll be it. This movie's a bloodbath. Like, holy shit.
It's almost like they were making up for lost opportunities in earlier movies.
Like, we're not.
And that's made apparent about 3 minutes into the movie.
The opening scene. And it's not quite like Kill Bill territory, but they got close.
Quite a bit.
And the thing was, I would just like to throw out real quick a lot of concerns I had going in with this R rating. Because, I mean, a lot of people like to claim it's because of cashing in on Deadpool, which we got that teaser at the beginning.
Is that considered a spoiler?
I wouldn't think so. I think it's already online, isn't it?
Oh, probably. It's fucking hilarious, though.
Yeah, because when they first showed him, I was like, did they just begin this movie with a Deadpool cameo after building up how serious it was going to be? But it was just it had no introduction. It was just the teaser before the 20th Century Fox logo.
How amazing would that have been, though?
But yeah, going back on that was one of my big concerns about this whole R rating thing was a lot of people were trying to say they were trying to cash in on the Deadpool thing, but Mangold said himself, and if you looked at the news back then, you remember this, they were trying to get the Wolverine rated R. They were trying really hard. Yeah. So that was always the plan for Logan, even before Deadpool was a success.
Yeah, and it's not the first adventure into an R-rated comic book movie. I mean...
Blade.
You have Blade, you have The Punisher, which this was probably the most violent comic book movie I've seen since The Punisher. Deadpool excluded.
Punisher Warzone's a lot worse than Punisher was violence-wise.
Yeah,
and quality-wise.
Yeah, but it sucked. The original Punisher I at least enjoyed.
Yeah. But the thing I was concerned about was when... I know this was to get people hyped. I know this. But I had a lot of concern. And that was a while back, they released the first page of the script. And at the very first thing on the script page was a disclaimer from the writers. And the way they worded this was like, they were going after the Avengers movies and saying like, when people, you gotta realize that this is a serious movie and, things are gonna get bloody, and when people fall, they're gonna die. When they get hit with something, they're gonna die. And it's not gonna, this is exact wording in the script, it's not gonna end with a CGI fuck-a-thon. And it was just kind of like...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I get what you're saying. And of course, and it was on that script page, and of course we know after seeing it, the very first line of the movie is Wolverine just... No context, no words around it. The first line of the movie is just Wolverine saying the word fuck. And when I saw that on that page, I was kind of like, I think this is going to be trying too hard. And it's
going to feel very forced.
Yeah, and it was that whole CGI fuck-a-thon thing, I get what they're doing, and I get that people are sick of that, but it just came off condescending in a bad way. Because it's basically like in trying to enforce that idea of, if your movie's not violent, bloody, and profane, it's not good.
Yeah.
And that's obviously just not the case. I mean, we're all comic book fans, right? We all love the Avengers movies.
Yeah. But this movie, it did feel... For a Wolverine movie and being about mutants, it did feel very ingrained in reality.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't feel fantastical. And I think part of that is what you and I talked about. For a long time, Wolverine and Xavier are the only mutants.
Yeah.
The only ones we see for a very long time. And even then, you find out later that, it's even beyond that.
And it's not without, the comedy and stuff. All that stuff is still in there.
It is. There are times it's very, very funny. Especially the interaction with just Wolverine and Xavier on their own with no other side characters to contribute. Just it's funny. At one point they go to there's a scene where they go to dinner with these people, and Wolverine calls Xavier his dad as like a disguise, and the way that they banter, it's kind of like that relationship.
My dad, Chuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing too is, I mean, I'm sure you all are prepared for this if you know it's, an aging Wolverine movie and how dark they want to go. I was actually kind of caught off guard by how depressing it is overall. Like throughout the whole movie too, like he's really, like he's always been the, everything I, get close to dies or whatever. But I mean, he gets really into that.
As Susan says, he's mopey.
Yeah.
Yeah. She doesn't like him because he's so mopey. And in this movie, it's a very dark look on things. Like the future looks like kind of grim, and there's no mutants, and
that goes into the realism too. The whole back in back in the 90s when movies were set in like what is present day now, it was like flying cars and like silver buildings. But this knows to, even in 2029, it'll probably still look about the same, just some technology will be different, and a lot of things will be gone.
The only thing that they use the future thing for is to say there's no mutants. At one point, Xavier's like, there hasn't been a natural mutant born in 25 years. And the future here isn't used as a gimmick for effects. It's just used to advance a story and to make a more realistic reason as to why there's no mutants anymore.
The only thing that kind of looked futuristic was the inside of his limo.
Yeah,
like where it said his name.
But even then, they talk about how it was a 2024 model. So like, even then, it's not, at the timeline of the story, it's not even a brand new car. But every other car in the movie doesn't really look like that. It looks like a standard vehicle. Like, if you didn't know, just watching the movie, if you weren't given a timeline, you would just assume it was today.
Yeah. Except for the fact that they look older, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was, we were talking about the action, speaking of his limo.
Mm-hmm.
The action is pretty spectacular, is it not?
Yeah.
And the way they ingrain the violence into it as well,
mm-hmm.
where like it might, to some people it might feel like a bit overkill, but I felt like the violence and the brutality really blended in well.
There's a couple scenes that remind me of Fury Road, and that's a compliment. Like, especially the first scene, like the first action scene in Mexico,
when Boyd
the first
Holbrook's guys
big
are
one.
chasing him. Yeah.
Yeah, it had a very Mad Max feel. I don't know if it was the desert setting or what it was, but it had a very Mad Max feel to it, but in a good way.
In the X-Men movies, we're usually pretty iffy on our villain selection. What do you think of Boyd Holbrook's villain, the arm guy?
I've always thought, with the exception of Loki, that Marvel's villains are kind of weak.
Yeah.
And I think outside of X-Men, any villain that you put up that's not Magneto is automatically going to be second to Magneto. I just don't think they have very strong villains.
Spider-Man's got good villains, but depends on how you handle.
Yeah.
Right, Remy?
That and every villain is a result of a science problem.
The thing I noticed about Boyd Holbrook here, he really felt like he was channeling Garrett Hedlund in Death Sentence.
I don't remember enough about Death Sentence to make that comparison.
And Richard E. Grant as the Doctor is pretty good too.
Yeah. I think another area where this movie stood out too is, you were talking about earlier, when he gets hit, he bleeds and there's cuts and scrapes. At some points in the movie, he suffers permanent damage, and I think the makeup is really good in this movie for like the scars and how they slowly heal but not a lot. I think the makeup kind of stepped up in this movie too.
Especially since the opening scene is him taking a shotgun blast.
Yeah.
Like, it's him taking a shotgun blast, and then like right after that we see the title over him laying there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. I kind of love how unceremonious the opening credits were too.
Yeah, and then making Patrick Stewart look like 110 years old. Like.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart's like 75, and they have to put a lot of makeup on him to make him look old.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's one of those things, like, this movie has a lot going for it. The funny scenes are funny. The action is good. The makeup's really, really good. I mean, it's a really well put together movie.
What I thought was really interesting was putting the comics in it as something that's like a...
Almost like a fourth wall.
Yeah, and
like
it's
a 3.5 wall joke.
Where it's like... The comics exist when he's got the yellow outfit and stuff, but it's like he sees them and he explains that they're like exaggerated books on what actually happened with them.
And I think another thing with this movie too that I just thought of is a lot of the X-Men movies, you get the plot, which the plot of this is pretty much the bad guy. I can't remember what you said his name was.
The actor's name is Boyd Holbrook. I can't remember what his character's name is.
I think
it's something basic.
Metal hand guy. He's chasing this girl that escaped from this lab, and they're trying to get her back. I mean, it's a pretty basic plot. And when you go through the plot and you go through the story and the action, like, it's not... How do I put this? It doesn't feel heroic. Like, the action is very gritty.
Yeah.
Like, it feels less like a fantastical superhero movie and more like something like Death Sentence. Like, very, very gritty, and somebody that's just got a chip on their shoulder and has no interest in being a hero.
And that was something I want to talk about too. But I was about to go into it, and then I went into something else. But the whole tone thing about, obviously we're doing an R-rated movie now, and when you kind of go back and look at the Wolverine, it's the same thing. I can't tell if I like it or not that it just feels like we're in a totally different universe now. It does not, like how it doesn't fit the others tonally at all. Like, it feels like we're watching a totally different set of movies.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's one thing to have, like, Logan, dropping the fuck word everywhere, everything. But then, like, it brings a whole nother weirdness to it when you see Xavier do it. And he does it a couple times. One of his first lines in the movie, he tells Logan to fuck off. And that to me felt very out of character for him. But, like I said before, I feel like that could be explained because in the movie, his brain is regressing.
And obviously I have no problem with profanity, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that kind of bothered me was what you were saying, how it felt so out of character. Like, obviously, if somebody's going to say, fuck, in the X-Men world, it's Wolverine, because he already said, go fuck yourself and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, well, no, it was Charles and Eric in the other movies, but still,
Mm-hmm.
he was the first one. And he's always kind of had that, antagonistic attitude. But then, like, suddenly we get to Logan, and Wolverine is saying fuck like he's in a Rob Zombie movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, we know you're an R-rated movie, and we know you're celebrating that, and we know your fans are celebrating that, but maybe you could still kind of keep in line with, try to at least keep a little in line with what we...
I mean, I guess you could justify it in saying that in the other X-Men movies, he was around people that were like students, and he was at the school, and... But even then, you would think if it's the same Wolverine now that it was then, he still wouldn't give a shit. I mean, he freaking stole Cyclops' car. Like, he was just like, I don't give a shit.
And going back to you explaining the plot, how impressive is it that this movie was able to do the plot where you add in a kid, and not only is the kid not annoying, and not only does the kid not ruin the movie, she really enhances it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she has some of the best scenes.
Wicked. Yeah. And it's funny, too, because she doesn't... It's a very long time before she gets a line. Like, her acting and what she's going through is done through emotions or lack of emotions. And I think it's really effective.
And there's, if there's one thing I'm not really grasping onto here that I know was an idea was, obviously I've talked about before that James Mangold did this, and he's got, like, this incredibly vast filmography. It's like Ang Lee levels of diverse.
Mm.
And one of his movies is Walk the Line. Well, yes, it is, but I meant to say 3:10 to Yuma, which is a Western. And he's been with the Wolverine, and now this. His whole idea was to make it like a big Western, was his idea. And even Shane is figured into the movie at one point. I wasn't getting that vibe. I wasn't getting a Western vibe from it, though that was supposedly was Mangold's intention.
No, but now that you think about it, without giving too much away, there are some parallels with Shane.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, because you kind of got, like the girl is Brandon DeWolde, Wolverine is Shane, and Boyd Holbrook is Jack Palance.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, so I get a Shane vibe, but not a Western vibe, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and there's the whole old Western thing about the good guys wear white and the bad guys wear black. Boyd Holbrook's always wearing black. Wolverine's always wearing a white shirt.
Mm-hmm.
There's that.
His little white wife beater.
That's red for most of the movie.
Yeah.
So, overall, extremely satisfactory, yeah.
Yeah.
And the reviews are off the charts, I think.
Last I saw, it was certified fresh by quite a bit. I think it was in the 90s on Rotten Tomatoes.
It didn't get out. We've had a good couple of weeks here. So, is that about it?
But yeah, I mean, it's a rated R Wolverine movie. I mean, it tells a good story. You can tell that effort was put into it. You can tell that it wasn't something that, you can tell with what's put in it and the ideas that are displayed. I mean, it is a movie meant for closure.
Mm.
And the way that it ends, I mean, there's no extra to it. It ends when it's appropriate to end.
And Mangold even said, like, right up the front, don't stick around for an end credit scene, because there's not one.
No, it feels very final, because there's no, big, whenever, the other X-Men movies end, it's like, do-do-do, and there's, this big old credit thing, and with this one, it's just silent. The movie just ends.
Until when the man comes around.
Yeah. But even then, you gotta wait for the roll credits. I know when we were sitting in the theater, when it first ended, nobody moved.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of sat there for a minute, and I think they just kind of took it in. It's one of those movies that when it ends, you kind of do that. You kind of take it all in, because, it's... Well, I can't go really into any more without spoiling anything.
So, yeah, that's what that was. And it wasn't, like I said, I was worried about the trying too hard thing, but the whole, like Wolverine's Fox being a little out of control, that's really only for, like, the first 20 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
They're really trying, like, they're trying to do, like, the fan service, like, look how R-rated we are at the start.
Mm-hmm.
And then it finds a stride and goes into
Yeah,
it, and
then
everything.
you really only see it when he's frustrated or going through something, and
And
there's definitely a couple scenes where he gets very frustrated, and that's where a lot of the comedy comes from.
There's, like, one scene where he kind of turns into Walter Sobchak.
Yeah, yeah, and it's fun. It's another scene that's funny because it's just told through the girl's like facial
We
expressions.
see it from a
Like,
distance.
yeah, she's just watching it happen and has no reaction. Like the audience is losing, and it's funny too because I felt like that was a perfect time for that moment because that was very shortly after a very serious moment.
Yeah.
And it was like it lightened the mood back up. It was a movie that was very good at letting itself breathe. If there was a big action scene, there was some slowness to follow to let you catch your breath. If there was a big emotional payoff or something like that, there was some comedy to kind of offset it right on the back end. It was a movie that felt very audience friendly. Like it didn't put you too much in a rush, and then it didn't let you lull around too long.
And those
For a 2 hour and 15-minute movie, I mean,
and it's definitely one that needed that time to breathe because these action scenes get big.
yeah, I mean, kudos to the stunts and everything. I mean, I don't think there was very much CGI in it at all. I mean, it all felt very realistic.
Yeah, I know that was their point with that whole thing. It's like they really did pull it off.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're going in, like I saw some little kids in our showing, and if you're going in looking for a typical X-Men movie, you're going to the wrong movie.
Yeah, there was like a baby in the front row.
Yeah,
and it was
and it's not Deadpool either. Don't expect to go in and roll in the aisles laughing. It's a movie that takes itself very seriously.
And while Deadpool does have a lot of graphic violence in it, it doesn't have near the brutality that this does.
No,
it's
almost mean.
It's relentless. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you would think, like every time Wolverine goes after somebody, you would think they just fucked his mom and didn't call her back. Like I mean, it was very, very angry.
From the director and star of Kate Leopold comes.
But I think also, like, we were talking about how it's a good overall movie. I think the performances are good. I think Jackman nails it. Patrick Stewart's very good.
I do like with the case of Prisoners and some scenes in Les Mis. I think sometimes Jackman has a tendency to overact. Mm-hmm. That's mainly because of his... I don't blame him for it because of his stage roots. Like, the stage is where he comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but like the stuff that he was doing in like Prisoners, where he's going really, that's like is Wolverine. So here it's like totally welcome.
It fits, yeah. But it's you can definitely tell it's in the way he portrays it. It's a character that he loves, and it's a character that he's brought to life for the last 17 years. If you go all the way back to the first one.
But it does make sense, being an accomplished actor, especially on the stage, that he does want to kind of save up some of his juices to go on to other characters and other things.
I look forward to seeing him in other things.
He's already got an Oscar nomination, so he's ready to go.
I'm sure that won't be his last. But I think it's a good send-off to a very popular character.
Now let's see what that next one that's set in the 90s can do and bring us full circle.
I want to know what catastrophic event's going to happen that's going to turn James McAvoy into Patrick Stewart overnight, and Jennifer Lawrence into Rebecca Romaine Stamos, and
Fassbender.
And Fassbender and Ian McKellen. And I want to see if Peter Dinklage's character in Infinity War, how they're going to explain how it's not the same character in X-Men. Which I know why. Don't start hating in the comments. I know it's Fox and Marvel.
Who is it? It's Cody Smith-McPhee playing Alan Cumming, I think.
I don't even know who that is, but was it the same one in Apocalypse?
Nightcrawler.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Cody Smith-McPhee was Nightcrawler.
In Apocalypse?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
And then Alan Cumming in X2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
that one's actually believable, because I don't think there was much difference in age at that point.
How do you mean?
Like, I don't know.
Cody Smith-McPhee's like 20.
Okay. And Alan Cumming's like 50. Okay.
Well, like maybe 40 when X2 was out.
Yeah. So that'd be about 20 years.
Okay.
From the
Actually,
80s.
I think we may have overshot Alan Cumming's age. I can't tell.
Maybe. Sorry.
But anyway.
Sorry, Alan Cumming. You'll always be Boris to us. And Mr. Floop.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Uh,
Alright, so, next week, I pretty much have concrete plans for Kong. And then I guess we'll go from there. I'll probably see, like, The Shack and stuff at some point. Which is, like, some new Nicholas Sparks thing or something. Or at least it supposedly looks like it.
I thought you were talking about a movie about Shaq. Did you know that on TNT there's a NBA show that he's on, and whenever somebody does something stupid, he does it on a segment called Shacked and a Fool?
I'm not surprised, come to think of it. Like, that made more and more sense as you said it.
Yeah. This review's a lot like Logan. There was some very serious moments, and then we just had some hot fun moments.
Shacked and a fool.
Yeah, the name alone deserves a gold star.
And I should have another Versus on Friday. I think I might know what that is, but I might change my mind. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, I think we're about done here, aren't we? Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's a good movie. I think you should go check it out and leave your 5-year-old at home.
Yeah. I mean, like, people say that, but I mean, kind of for real.
Yeah, like, I saw 5-year-olds in Deadpool, and I've seen 5-year-olds in Wolverine. It's rated R for a reason.
Yeah. Alright. Last time I, like, edited it out when I had to turn it off, but since I'm just right here and time constraints, I'm just going to leave it in here. So.
Okay.
Alright.